The new version of eFootball has been out for over a week now, and today we'll look at what's different, how to adjust, and especially how to defend. Here comes Pepper. Welcome everybody! The first thing I want to talk about is a big change to the quick counter playstyle. Before the update, when losing the ball, your midfielders would immediately press towards the opponent's players, as can be seen in the following footage. This would result in the notorious quick counter gap between your midfield and your defense, because the midfielders would press forward while your defense would pull back. This would often allow the opponent a lot of free space. To combat this, I would sometimes use deep line or defensive midfielder, not to actually have him in the defensive line, but mainly to have him run back earlier, resulting in him covering exactly this gap. In the new update, quick counter doesn't work like this anymore. You can see it here, I lose the ball, but Vieira turns backwards instead of pressing. Another instance here where you can actually see that both defensive midfielders pull back instead of pressing. There still is some pressing mechanic, as you can see here, but it seems to be different and far from what it was before. Before showing some defensive stuff, I think it's important to understand what changed that requires different defending now. First of all, through balls are extremely good now. Not only the passes on their own, but also other changes. Acceleration, for example, now matters longer again, for 3 instead of 2 tiles, and strikers usually have higher acceleration than defenders. On top of that, offensive awareness now additionally helps strikers with early acceleration. The breakpoint is 90 here. Credits for all this kind of information in the video go to Amadeus, by the way, and also to Santarius for his translation work. Also, in general, players accelerate and turn slower than before. Everybody is more clunky on and off the ball. Now let's look at this. Rummenigge's body is in an ideal position. He can start running without having to turn. The defender here faces slightly forward, meaning he will need to turn. Now, I played a lofted through ball. Rummenigge is already accelerating, while the defender hasn't even moved yet and is still facing towards the ball. This gives my striker an easy head start, making it extremely hard for defenders to catch up. This is why I like Neuer even more now, because he will sometimes just collect these passes with ease. Manuel Neuer. Another thing that makes players less agile is that they can't turn as fast anymore. Look at Vieira here, or at Messi here. This means that you have to defend more carefully. Let's have a look at different situations. Here, I just sprint to get close, and then release sprint in order not to get too close and to avoid overshooting. Had I kept sprinting this way, my opponent could just cut in and I couldn't turn in time. Likewise, if I would sprint towards the opponent or to the left, he could have easily evaded and my player could not recover in time. So what I do is, I fall back a little and try to anticipate where my opponent will go. I see what my opponent does and try to follow him with matchup so I don't get too fast. Again, no sprinting. Since he just keeps going, I get the ball. Had my opponent turned again or did a feint, my defender could have still reacted because I was not too fast to turn and chase again. Here's another example of patient defending. I pull my defender back here for the sole reason that I don't want to trust the defensive AI. I don't know if this player will actually be marked properly, so I pull back to anticipate a possible through ball. As soon as I see that my AI player is marking nicely, I can approach the ball carrier again. Same principle applies as before. Sprint to get closer, but as soon as we're within his vicinity, stop sprinting, slowly approach, usually in a 45-degree angle, depending on your position. Like before, I hold matchup so my player doesn't go too fast and keeps up, and try to go for the side I expect the opponent to choose. Most people usually choose the side their player has the stronger foot on. Again, patient defending, waiting for the opponent's move, then getting close enough to steal the ball. Here, for example, you can see why I don't trust the AI and why it's important to observe what your defense is doing. This situation doesn't look any bad at all. I'm keeping my 45 degrees, trying to hold matchup in case he does a pass, and I still have Rijkaard behind me, and Vieira marking the potential passing target. Except, joke's on me, because everyone is an imposter. It's pretty unfortunate though. Vieira Raika just gets outrun. Raika doesn't pull back but just stays in the middle doing nothing because he trusts Vieira, and all the guy over here did was preventing the offside. Thanks for that one. Benched. What I should have tried here was, as soon as I saw the opponent cut in, switch to Raika and move him into the passing lane. This situation is why it's important not to always blindly trust the AI, but observe what's happening around potential through ball targets. Another thing to keep in mind is to only go for a critical interception if you 100% know you will get the ball. In this situation, I knew what was gonna happen. I didn't even sprint because I was so sure I would intercept. Yeah, it just turns out Cannavaro misses it very narrowly. Due to the turning and the acceleration changes, this gets punished way harder now, so be careful with it, especially with defenders. To solve this situation, I just kept Raikkonen in between the two opposing players. I expected my opponent to cross, so I anticipated it, and shortly before, I pulled Raikkonen closer to the crossing target. Then I just quickly pressed clear. If you are in an uncomfortable situation like this, you can also purposely move out with your defender to bait, because many people will then pass and you can just turn back and take the ball. Let's move to, in my opinion, the single most important situation after the update. If you can consistently solve these both offensively and defensively, you are set. It is this situation where you have one player with quite a bit of space in front of him. Many people will just keep sprinting, but I think that's not good. It's way better to slow down once you're far enough, let the opponent approach and use his own force against him and go by. Look here, first I move Raikkonen back to avoid a quick through ball. Once I see that my AI defender is not trolling, I deal with the ball carrier. But I don't rush into him because that would give him all the options to go past me. Like before, I approach slowly. If he kept sprinting now, I would have just taken the ball from him easily. So by slowly approaching, I also slow his player down. I would actually approach him further now to make him change direction, but I can't because this player here is coming. So I turn and try to pick up the pace again so I could at least try to slide into a possible through ball. A lofted through ball here could have been a problem, although I think this player here with a manual switch could have tried to move in to do something. But imagine I would have just sprinted towards the opponent with Raikkonen in the beginning. Then I would have no chance to stop a low through ball because the opponent's player would be all alone. Something that is also different now is the sliding tackle. I think that it's more important now than before because not only can it help you to intercept passes, but it can also help you in the situations I just showed. If you look here, I'm actually in a horrible position. The opponent's player here has a lot of free space, and I can't use my player to move towards him because then he will do a through ball or a lofted through ball to this player here. What you can do here is just shortly before the next touch, you run into him and risk the slide. If it works out, he will be stuck in the running animation and you just get the ball. Had my opponent slowed down, it would have been a lot more difficult to do something. So basically, once you are within a certain distance, if the attacker sprints and the defender doesn't, the defender can just get the ball like here. If the defender sprints and the attacker doesn't, you can just pass the defender like here. If neither of them sprint, I would say it's a slight advantage for the attacker in this patch because the defender must react properly to the attacker's movements and he can't just press, otherwise he risks overcommitting. If both players sprint, it just depends on when they started and in which part of the animation they are. One has to be careful with sliding tackles though. If they are mistimed, things can go bad. If I know that an opponent will slide into me, I might try to quickly get a turn in to get a free kick and a yellow card. If the distance is big enough, another option would be to use any feint or even finesse dribbling to get past, totally avoiding the sliding tackle. So basically, there are just a few things to consider about basic defending. Always consider the possible through ball. Do not rush out, especially not with a backline player who's marking. Do not approach opponents too fast unless they're stuck in an animation. Observe important AI duels. and defend carefully and with thought. Something else I recommend is when challenging an opponent up front is to not shy going for the less likely option. It's a mind game, but if you look here, the easy option for my opponent would be to just pass it up to either the keeper or defender and then do whatever with it. Situation would be over. He expects me to think the same way and be like, I have to try to stop the most likely option. But what if I think that he will think exactly this? Then he will turn into me. Something else I noticed is that the player selection would sometimes be completely off. Like if you look at this, the ball is clearly going to Rummenigge, yet the game put me on Gullit. Same thing here. It's obvious that this player is a lot closer than the one the game put me on. Now if this was consistent, it wouldn't be a problem because you could just manually switch yourself, but since it isn't, it's a bit annoying. Another thing I noticed is that defensive players seem to be a lot better at winning the ball from an opponent from behind now. Could just be me though. Something else I've noticed is that the TESS cancel is slightly weaker than before. It's still amazing though, don't worry. The feint itself didn't change, but when you do it, you have to accelerate again. And accelerating is a bit slower than before. Also, since players are more clunky on the ball now, you also have to be a bit more careful when to start it. Don't get me wrong, it's still an amazing tool, but perhaps a bit more situational now. The good thing is, if your opponent wants to defend against the TESS cancel, he has to commit to the inside pretty early. So if you have done it once and your opponent expects it, you could just decide not to do this time and just keep running instead. Or if your opponent now expects you to keep running, you just cut in. I think to make the mind game even easier, just slow down a little, but keep direction. Then the opponent expects the cut in, but you just pick up the pace again. Another thing that has changed with this patch are physical duels. When an attacking player is right next to a defender, the physical duel isn't as harsh on him anymore, and he can often slip through, but I'm sure you've all seen that in the trailer anyway. Another thing I feel like is a bit better than before is left stick dribbling, for two reasons. The first one is that you have more space because of fewer pressure and AI players only running at 70% in some situations. The second reason is that since defenders are a lot more clunky now, it is easier to use their momentum against them. Some feints also seem to be really good, Marseille turn especially, even if you don't have the skill. And I also think that scissors feint and chop turn are better than before. So yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways how dribbling is possible. Left stick dribbling, finesse dribbling, feints or different cancels. However, I feel like the increased clunkiness of the players overall made all of dribbling a bit less enjoyable. At least for me, maybe you guys like it. Another thing I think I noticed is that interceptions are a bit worse now. Could also just be me though, no tests. But if you look at this here, or this here, I feel like before the update they would have intercepted. Perhaps it's also not the actual interception, but the decreased acceleration. Since there's less pressure overall now, I feel like high balls to a side or attacking midfielder are even better now, even from goal kicks. You will just have a lot more space. Now, if you wonder why I didn't say anything about link up yet, I have never used it myself, never noticed it against me, so I actually just don't have an opinion. In which case, I rather say nothing. Something else I noticed is that the game once overrid my super cancel run. This has not happened to me before. If you look at my input, Owen should be going the other direction, but he didn't. That was weird. But now the big question, is the game better now or not? Honestly, I don't know. I still haven't decided. I feel like passing is way too powerful now, especially through balls and lofted through balls, resulting in even more through ball spam than before. Attacking became easier. Also, like before the update, I used to dribble a lot, work a lot with feints and cancels, but when I watch my replays now, I do so a lot less, because passing is just so powerful, and I feel like a bit of the skill gap was lost. Since players are a lot more clunky on the ball now, dribbling just isn't as flexible anymore, but more situational. Like, I do understand what Konami tried to do. They wanted to slow down the game, they wanted to reduce the pressing, which are great ideas to be fair, and I can even understand why they did what they did to accomplish it. But my question question for which I don't have an answer yet, to be honest. At what cost? Is every player being less agile now worth it? Are these changes worth reducing the smoothness of controlling the ball? I don't know, I really don't. On the one hand, it's probably a bit more realistic than before. On the other hand, the skill gap has probably decreased. I do see the benefits of the new version though. So yeah, I'm kinda torn. Some things I like, others not so much. I totally understand everybody who likes the new version, but I also understand those who don't. That's it, folks. Let me know if you liked this video. I'd love if you subscribed, liked, or commented. Until then, guys, take it easy. Shaka!